Be about um, what in the hell goes on in the funeral business. And I have a person here who has been in the funeral business for a good number of years. How long have you been just working in a mortuary as a whole?
Uh, Probably about 13 and a half years.
13 and a half years. Geez, didn't you been doing it that long? I didn't even realize. Um, how old were you when you started doing that?
I think seven, no, I think 18,
18
18 in high school.
in high school?
Yep.
So you started doing this before you even graduated.
Yes.
That's crazy. All right, so you started doing this in high school. That's crazy because I mean most people. I mean, this is kind of the reason why I wanted you to be on here to begin is because it's like a lot of people um will they typically they get out of high school and they like I don't know start working a job maybe at Starbucks or something like that. But you went down a very different route, which to me is super unique. Like you're saying, you started doing this when you were in high school, like before you even graduated.
Yeah. So pretty much had a job. They were 1099 to me on taxes, so that job didn't work out for my class in high school. So knew someone in the industry, and they got me the job. Otherwise, I probably would have been another one. Fast food at 18. So
Yeah, no, that's nuts. So, um, in the beginning, because well, so what is it that you do exactly that you do now?
right.
What is your what is your role inside of a mortuary?
Crematory operator right
And so, how long have you been a crematory operator?
now. The past 10 years.
So I imagine I assume for the first three, what were you doing?
Removals, working services, uh, getting families set up to meet with the rangers, pretty much anything that was needed that wasn't embalming.
Because you need a license to embalm, no?
Yes. Yes, you need to go to school and you need to pass your state license to become an embalmer.
That's crazy. So as a crematory operator, like what you do now, do you play any role into what the mortician did? Because I know, like you're saying, you have to have a license to embalm, but like, is it you only have to have a license just to embalm the person, or like,
We do have Canna cremation training that we go through um, as far as our company. So, I mean, there is some stuff that you kind of need to be trained on, but as far as like a full on school, graduating, needing a license, no, it's not that.
that's crazy. No, I mean, because like I was saying, I think this entire thing is so unique because most people get out of school, they get a whatever job, Starbucks, McDonald's, whatever, and I don't know. I assume that they go to school to do whatever they're gonna do. During that time that you worked at a funeral home, did you go to school? Did you imagine that you weren't gonna end up doing this for 13 years? Like you're gonna.
No, no, no. So I actually quit the first funeral home when I was went to mechanic school. So
Oh, I
did
see.
that and then finished mechanic school, got laid off because that's when the economy pretty much took a crap. And
2008.
then excuse me?
2008.
Yeah.
Around that
And
time.
then
Uh-huh.
yeah, so that happened and then was unemployed for a good probably 7 months, which sucked.
Yeah.
And then again knew someone that was working transport um, that had got hired on at a funeral home and was like, oh hey, there's a funeral home out towards LA that needs
Right.
some. So it was like, okay, cool. So I went and applied there, got the job, and pretty much started doing that.
Yeah, that's because I so how do I say? Because I myself I applied to a few different funeral homes around just in Southern California, and I only got like an interview at one of them, but they were basically gonna have me do the exact same thing as you. I mean, one of the ones that I applied to, the guy was basically he didn't mention anything about picking up bodies or anything like that, but basically he was saying that I just basically help out with any funeral arrangements that they had. But I don't know, life took me down a different course. But so from 1 year in high school until now, like you said, you've worked in the industry for 13 some years. Like, has being exposed to I don't want to say death, but because there's a lot more that goes into it, being exposed to this on a daily, being exposed to all this stuff on a daily basis, like, has it changed your outlook on life? Just, I mean, as a whole, because I mean, you're exposed to all kinds of crazy stuff every single day. I mean, most of the stuff that you see, hey, hey, most of the stuff that you see on a daily basis, I'm,
Mhm.
I'm like most people, if not like 90% of people in this world, will never be exposed to. And like, how, in your opinion, how has that changed your outlook just on life as a whole? Like,
Oh, yeah, no, I totally, you know, you could be up at any time, so to speak, and just kind of like, I don't know, like,
heal over, yeah.
death really doesn't have, don't really wait for anyone, you know, kids, teenagers, you know, 20s, 30s, you know, we see it all, you know, different stuff, car accidents, something you would think like, oh, just going out for the night, and yeah, dude, just don't come home, you know, and just one of those where it's like, okay, you may have gotten hit by a drunk driver, or like something may have happened at a show, got into a fight.
To, how do I say, to
Absolutely,
most
baby.
to most people who this happens to, whether it be a loved one, family member, uh brother, sister, I don't know, it is very sad. But to you, like, on your side, dealing with the people that pass away, like I was saying, because you're so exposed to this stuff on a daily basis, is it kind of just like, how do I
Made it
say it?
hard as far as like processing,
Yeah,
like as far
yeah,
as when it
like,
comes to
is
grief.
it
Yeah,
still
yeah, no, 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 definitely. I can honestly say if it's not someone that I was like really close to, probably doesn't hit me the same just because I see it all the time, you know.
yeah,
So I mean, it's not somewhere it's like, okay, cool. Like if I hear that someone passes that I wasn't close to, now it's kind of like, oh, okay, you know, but it's because I see it all the time. Versus someone I was like really close to, it's like, okay, cool. Like then it actually hits, you know, if that makes sense.
yeah, no, actually, yeah, it makes sense. And no, it's just that and like I keep on saying, to me, the whole pers- your perspective is just super unique, because like I said, most people in their lifetime will most likely never be exposed to the stuff that you are on a daily basis. So as time has gone on, like, would you say that, how do I say, has anything has anything you've been exposed to really, like, kind of resonate with you? Because you've, I guess you could say, you've almost become immune to seeing all kinds of crazy things. But to this day, are there still specific things that do maybe mess with you when you go home?
Yeah, I would say probably like kids,
Yeah.
probably even the ones probably like older that like suicide, where it's kind of like, okay, cool. Like you look at it to where it's like, oh, like I remember when I was 12, 13, like never thought about going that route. And it's like where, you know, 20 years later, it's like, okay, actually living a life. It's like, okay, cool. Like if you look at it, like they really didn't get to live a life. So
Yeah,
that
no,
one's,
that's,
you know, pretty crappy.
yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I myself can't even imagine that. I mean, shit. I mean, I imagine that would resonate with anybody.
Yeah.
Obviously, for like anyone who wants to watch this, it just goes to show that even for a person who's been doing this for a good number of years, like, there still probably is not a single thing that they haven't seen that probably still would not affect them. And I think that probably just comes down to being a human. I mean, if
Yeah.
you,
Right. You know, and especially you see like on our end, um, you kind of see what the families go through because it's like, okay, if it's, you know, something with services or anything like that, you know, our families get met with and you see like the pain and the sadness that they have, it's kind of like, okay, like, yeah, like not cool, you know.
yeah, absolutely. What is it that you think that separates you from somebody else and going into this industry? Like, what makes you so different compared to somebody else? Like, I mean, like,
I don't think it's necessarily different. I think it's just being able to handle, seeing stuff. Because I've worked with people that would come back and see stuff, in like prep areas or things like that, and they would walk out and leave. It's kind of like, tear up, kind of like, okay, cool. Like I wasn't expecting to see something like that. So I mean, I don't necessarily think something about being built different or having something different. I think it's just more being able to like, okay, cool, like being able to not let that affect you that hard.
oh, I like that answer. That's a really good answer, actually.
In the beginning, when I was being trained, as far as anything, prep wise, it's kind of like, yeah, real standoffish, didn't really want to, okay, cool. Like how to like just real versus how I am now. If something needs to be done, I know how to like, okay, like this is what you do. You maneuver this or you do this and you just kind of get in there and do it.
Right.
But like I said, starting out, I was not like that. It was one of those where it's like, okay, cool. Like, is this okay? Okay, cool. Like, what's going on? Da da da. Just
So
very
you think basically over the years you've been able to get more of a handle on like what you see, like how do I say, also like almost in your mind you've grown a callous to like certain things, and like as time goes on, like in your mind you kind of that callous just kind of builds more and more. Not that you're like a psycho or anything, and like if you see this stuff it doesn't affect you. It's more just like you've gotten a better handle on things and you get a better handle on it uh more and more as you go, basically.
right.
Yeah, no, that and like I keep saying, to me, it's just this whole thing is fascinating. And I hope that like some of these questions that I ask you actually give people a better perspective on like just the psychology that goes into being in the funeral industry. What do you think is the hardest part about doing what you do? Because like I said, most people they go to work and maybe the hardest thing that they have to do is I don't know, a pile of paperwork or something. But whereas like for you and what you do, it's a completely different ball game, at least psychologically. So in your opinion, what would be the hardest thing about working in a crematory in your opinion?
I think it's just trying as far. I think mainly it's just caseload.
Really?
Knowing what we have to do. Obviously, with like some pertaining to COVID, we have gotten busier. But I mean, if before COVID hit, what we were doing and everything, it was kind of like, okay, cool. Like we knew what our schedule was, we knew what was going to be going on, everything else, and it was pretty much just like, okay, get in and kind of, nothing was going to be too crazy. No, it was going to be a straight pretty much 8 hours. And then you just had to make sure like, your paperwork was right. That way, for us, we get audited by the state, we audited.
Oh, you do? Well, why do you get audited by the state?
Yearly inspection. So they come
But
out
like
every year.
regarding what? Like what do they audit exactly?
They will just come out, they will pull 3 case files and just to make sure that everything does match, all the paperwork is correct. They will look at your logs and just kind of look around to make sure like everything is in order at your crematory, that you do have the licenses and everything that you do need, so
And
that one,
what were you saying?
oh yeah, so that one is yearly. And it's one of those where it's like, all right, like they don't set it up with you, it's just random. So they will come in randomly and like, okay, once a year, all right, take a look around, make sure you have everything, make sure your logs, paperwork, everything's in order, and that everything is running how it should be.
Super interesting. So from what I'm getting, like as if I was a normal person, I guess I consider myself a normal person, but I just from my perspective, it seems basically working in a funeral home is just like working anywhere else. You have amount of work you need to do in a like specific amount of time. You have people that come out and audit whatever it is you do, just like anywhere else. Only difference is you guys are dealing with death.
Right. Death, biohazard.
Biohazard, what do you mean by that?
So once you pass away, anything, if you have any fluid, so if you like, died in surgery or, bloody, anything like that, that is considered biohazard.
Really? So would a dead body just in general basically be considered a hazard to biology?
Yeah. So, well, just in general, any bodily fluid is considered biohazard.
Interesting. So when I think of biohazard, I think of like chemicals, but I never thought of a dead body as being considered a biohazard. I guess you learn something new every day, right?
Yep.
Regarding yourself and how you're exposed to all these crazy things on a daily basis, like have you actually ever had an experience like have you ever seen an apparition of somebody? Have you ever been felt anything from somebody? Because I've heard all kinds of different stories on people, let's say that they were embalming someone or cremating someone and they got some kind of
No, I mean,
premonition from
I've
that
heard
person.
stuff, which is probably about as far as I go. But as far as like seeing, like, oh, like, hey, like, walked in and there was like a huge shadow right here or like that. No, but I have heard stuff, before, as far as like stuff
Yeah.
being and things like that, and being the only one, in the building. But just kind of chalk that up to like, all right, like, heard a noise, dismiss
So
it.
there's multiple. There are times when you're basically the only person inside the like funeral home working by yourself, just doing what.
Mhm.
See, that's what I'm saying. Like to most people, that just be to most people, they didn't want to be in their house alone because they're afraid something,
Right, right,
whether it be
right.
some kind of demonic thing, can attack them for whatever reason, or you know what I mean. But that's what I mean. The psychology on this spectrum or this realm of the world it just blows me away, and I'd imagine to a lot of other people it would too. So and that's what I mean, like the fact that you're able to just be at a funeral home by yourself, just cremating a body all by yourself willy-nilly. But I think it goes along with like some of the questions I already asked you about, like how much you can handle. Like I don't know if maybe being alone in a funeral home was an issue in the beginning, maybe, was it?
Oh yeah, yeah, no, totally was. It was one of those where it's like, so the first funeral home I worked at, I would lock up, and it was one of those where it's like, if it was a small service,
Oh,
you really didn't need two people there, and it was like, all right, so you would sit there, you would, escort the family out at the end, and like, okay, cool, we'll see you guys tomorrow for, graveside service, and then after you, let them out, you start cleaning, you would vacuum everything else, and yeah, as you would kind of like, start at the front of the mortuary, and as you work your way back, you would just start hitting lights as you worked your way back. And then at the end,
yeah.
it's like, okay, by the time you got to the back, it's like, all right, you had the one light on, you would shut that off, and then it was like pitch black, and like, get your stuff and go home. And at first, yeah, that was like okay, cool, like, all right, we're good. But like the vacuuming, like looking over your shoulder, things like that, But after a while, it's kind of like, all right, there's no one here, it's just me.
That's nuts. That's nuts. God, yeah. No, that's nuts. When someone passes away, let's say they pass away in their house, someone calls 911 and someone has to come pick up the body. What is just a general process of from when someone passes away to the point where they're in the ground or in an urn?
Um,
Just a general process.
so
Is
so for I know for there is a expedited process for religious purposes that we normally
right.
get for some, that need to be in the ground or in an urn within a certain amount of time. It's kind of like those ones kind of get expedited, move along fairly quick. Standard, it's normally if someone passes away, you would call the funeral home, and normally within, I'd say about like 2.5, 3 hours is when we would try to, within that time frame from getting a call and, going to pick up your loved one. Yeah, that was a time frame. And then, would go over as much as we could, and then pretty much just tell the family, like, okay, like, hey, like, any questions you do have, write them down. Yeah, you will be meeting with an arranger. Normally, if everything went good, you were probably looking about 10 to 18 days.
10 to 18 days from the moment they died
Yeah, to
The
being
final.
able to, get permits, do the paperwork, embalming, have the casket ordered, and, pretty much too, all funeral expenses need to be paid before your loved one is buried or cremated.
Permits for what exactly? Like, what do you have to have a permit
So
for?
you need a permit. So you get a death certificate you get when you die. You also need a permit, and the permit is pretty much going to tell you what disposition is going to be done with your body. So whether you're being buried, cremated, or even shipped to a different state,
Uh-huh.
it's covered on the permit.
Interesting. And is that something you guys have to apply for, or the family?
Nope. No, it's one of those things that the family and the funeral home. So the funeral home gets all the info from the family, and they kind of do a rough draft death certificate with all the info. Then they send that in, and then once it's approved and everything, then when they apply for an actual working copy of the death certificate, they apply for the permits, and they normally get those same time.
So if someone passes away, let's say, I mean, I don't want to jinx myself, but let's say I passed away right here, right now, just drop dead right here, right now. What is it that my family would need to do for people who don't know?
So they would probably call a paramedic at first,
Right.
to kind of see, and then what paramedics arrived and you were gone. It pretty much, if you live in certain counties, they will automatically give you a coroner's case ID number.
Uh-huh.
And that's just standard with every decedent in that county.
Right.
I want to say before, if you had not seen a doctor within the past year and a half or 2 years, I believe,
Right.
they would sit there and you had to go to the coroner, but I know the time has been shortened. I don't know the time period anymore, but I know if you have not seen a doctor or anything like that, you will be going to the coroner's office to kind of see if, pretty much an autopsy to see why you passed away.
And from what I've heard, you don't have to have an autopsy, no?
No. An autopsy is not standard. But I know families do have the right to request an autopsy. But yeah, so there are companies out there that you could contact to do a private autopsy for you, and they will come pick up your loved one from hospital, funeral home, anything like that, and do a private autopsy for you.
So do certain people not have a right to have an autopsy, or does everybody
No,
have it?
it's just one of those things where it's like, okay, if you have a history of poor health, or you have been diagnosed with heart failure or anything like that when you do pass away. Okay, cool. We know what it's from. He had a weak heart, everything else, he was in heart failure. So they just sign off on it, versus if it's something where you haven't been to the doctor forever, they're going to go well, I don't know. Last time I saw my patient was X amount of years ago. I'm not signing a death certificate for him.
Oh, interesting.
So at that point, county will come do their, what they have to do as far as autopsy or toxicology, anything like that. And then if they don't see anything wrong, then the county will sign off on the death certificate.
You know what? Are there specific facilities that do cremation only, or does a funeral home do the whole thing?
No, there's some that only have. So there's some that are only funeral homes that we call standalone funeral homes, and that means they are not attached to a mortuary, or I'm sorry, a cemetery.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just, they're strictly just a funeral home. And if where burial takes place or anything else, you would go to the cemetery that you choose.
Right.
Then there's funeral homes that, do have the cemetery on site, but won't have a crematory all the time. And then there are funeral homes that have the, cemetery and crematory on site.
And I know that not every funeral home has a prep room, and
right.
Could you vaguely explain what a prep room is for people?
Where the embalming takes place, where any prep for the decedent would take place before the funeral service.
So in that room.
Yeah. So as far as embalming, dressing, casketing, cosmetics, things like that.
Actually, this is a question I don't really answer to, and someone asked me years ago. This just in your opinion. Let's see if you know the answer or not. Someone told me once that they wanted to do makeup for people who are deceased. Do you got? I'm sure that you guys have people that come in, like a family pays, or just
Yeah,
like in your.
the family could always do their own cosmetics. Like we'll sit there and say, oh, like, hey, get our loved one dressed, but don't do cosmetics. We're gonna hire someone to come and do it. But as far as like, the places that I've worked, normally the embalmers are the ones that do the cosmetics on your loved ones.
Interesting. So like even if it's like a guy who has never had a girlfriend or anything like that and has never done makeup to anybody, they still they still do the
Yep.
makeup. Oh, that's
Yep.
interesting. Yeah. No, that's so for this person who asked me this, like, would you consider that if they actually want to do makeup for someone who's deceased, like they either need to have the connections to a family of someone who passed away,
No,
or
not
they could just
really.
be a
It's more.
mortician?
I'm pretty sure there's a way to kind of like put your name out there, or like, oh, hey, like this person can do it. But I mean, as far as like when the cosmetics come, like the cosmetics normally used on decedents are different quality. Pretty much, the cosmetics that we use are going to need to be heavier, so that they take to your skin once you passed away.
Super interesting. I didn't know that. So that maybe makes sense why a guy who's never done makeup on anyone or anything can simply just pat some makeup on someone that they're
Yeah, and it's
involved
pretty
with.
much just matching the tone of their skin. So it's not something that you need to be, oh, okay, cool. Hey, like we need to get real in depth. No, normally it's like, okay, cool. You kind of look at the hands, and that will normally will give you like the color of their skin. And that's what you try and match their face to.
Right. So from I know you're not a mortician and you yourself don't embalm people, but like from what I've heard is like when somebody is embalmed, you want to make them look as if they're basically alive.
Yep.
Is that just a myth or is that actually like correct?
No, that's kind of like your goal. That's what you shoot for.
So like
Just because, I mean, if the embalming is not good quality, so pretty much you have to look at it. If you do a really good job on the embalming, that person or the decedent is going to be well preserved, looking good for their services.
right.
If you do kind of a poor job on the embalming, it doesn't really preserve the body as well, and then the body will start breaking down slowly.
Does making them look good when they're embalmed, like does that come down to skill or does it come down to just a how much chemical you put in them? Or in
Um,
your opinion, what do you think?
Obviously, you would need good quality chemicals, because I know there are a couple different manufacturers out there that sell embalming fluid and different things like that.
Right.
But it also comes down to the embalmer, because like I've heard a saying recently that said there are no good embalmers out there, and
Okay.
and I think that is just a horse crap statement.
Okay.
You want to
Why?
be a good embalmer because you could do a good embalming. If you sit there, you take your time, you know how to embalm and things like that. Like, hey, your embalming's gonna come out good. If you sit there, you're rushing your
Mhm.
case. I'm trying to get done, and if you weren't really trained well on it, then I mean, that's what you're gonna produce.
Interesting. That's what I'm saying. Like most people, they don't even think about any of this stuff, and this is exactly why I wanted to have you on here because this is a subject that it fascinates me, and most people don't ever think about any of this stuff. So you got depending on if the funeral home you work at, if they if they have a prep room, they'll do everything there. But if they don't, the embalming and all stuff would be done somewhere else, and then they're basically shipped to you guys, and you guys.
Yes. So the way that it would work, normally there is a centralized location where all prep is done. So some companies that are big will sit there and kind of have like places where, okay, we own 4 funeral homes, but it costs money to operate a prep room out of all of them. So if we just have one of these funeral homes that has a good sized prep room, we can do all the prep there. And then once the decedent is in their casket, things like that, like we'll actually deliver to the mortuaries and do that. That way you're not paying for every funeral home to have the prep room.
Right. And so that actually leads me to my next question is death is expensive, is it? Is dying expensive?
Very, very.
Very. Wow.
So pretty much, like I said earlier, all expenses for your funeral do need to be paid before disposition takes place. So what that means is
Wow.
before you're buried or before you get cremated,
Uh-huh.
everything that the mortuary has done, and is charging for, that you have signed for, needs to be paid.
And
Otherwise,
I
nothing
imagine
happens.
that's not something that's gonna cost a good couple, like $50. We're talking into the
Right,
thousands.
right. So I know cremations, they kind of range in price from about $900 up to I think $2,500.
Why do they
And
range in price? I imagine it's the same process, no?
yeah, same process. I think it just depends where you go, how much people
Oh.
charge. But then it also climbs from there depending on if you get an urn, because some urns again range from $150 up to I think $4,000.
Hmm.
Um, and then depending on what you get cremated in. Some, I think the cheapest option is a cardboard cremation container.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Um, also have wooden cremation containers, and then also full on wooden caskets that they cremate as well. And when you get into caskets, I mean, 5, 6, 7, $8,000. So I
Yeah,
mean, and
that's your
they,
vehicle to the afterlife,
yeah,
basically, right? Yeah.
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 So that's where it gets expensive too, depending on what kind of cremation container you choose.
And then so just I mean, you mentioned the casket, you mentioned the cremation, you mentioned well the urn. What about just the services just in general? I imagine that those range in price and can be expensive.
Yeah, so I mean,
Or how
you
about this?
know,
What is so like let's say what is like the basic funeral arrangement? I know someone may want to have a viewing of their, so people can go see them for the
um,
last time and then they're buried.
I think your most basic service would be you purchase the casket,
Right.
if that's what you're choosing for burial. But it would be okay, don't embalm, but I still want my loved one dressed, and
Right.
I would I would still like him prepped, which
Uh-huh.
would pretty much mean, eyes closed, mouth closed, make sure that they're like viewable pretty much, without
Right.
the embalming. And then just placed into the casket, and the family gets a quick 10 or 15-minute ID view.
And that's
And
basically
after
the
that,
cheapest.
yeah, and then after that, just go straight to the graveside and bury. If you don't want to do that, you could actually just, bury as is, no prep, no dressing, just in the casket, and then not even see your loved one. You could have the funeral home sign off with a picture or something like a scar, just another way to identify them.
Oh yeah, yeah.
The funeral home will do it for you, and then they will just, you could be there to watch your loved one go into the ground.
Right.
So those will probably be the cheapest issues, and then obviously, gets up in price as far as like what kind of casket you choose, and then if you would like a full-on funeral service, and then a graveside to follow, which means the casket gets loaded into the hearse and then you follow it to the graveside.
Hmm.
If you would like a reception, or it'd be one of those, a church service one night and then next day, so I mean, as the more stuff you want, it just keeps climbing.
And so what's like the most expensive service that you've seen in price? Price.
Um,
Are we talking like $1 million service here or what?
I've never seen that high, but I mean, I've seen some $12,000 caskets come through, and it's kind of like, okay, that's just what you're paying for the casket, and then, you figure, church service. So that's transportation to the church and back, and depending where you want to be. And then you figure if you get into a private estate,
Uh,
as far as like plot, which means that you would own like a chunk of the cemetery that you could, put
oh
four,
yeah, yeah.
put 4 or 5, uh, have 4 or 5 barrels take place, there. And it's like, that could be like your family section, so it all climbs up in price. And I know those aren't cheap either, you know?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. You're basically buying a plot of land, kind
yep.
of essentially, right? What makes a casket so expensive? Is it like the quality of the wood, or like what?
Yeah, yeah,
Do you
yeah.
have
So
gold inflated on it?
our basic casket, it's just,
Wood?
yeah, it would be a cloth covered casket.
What do you mean by that?
So it's not metal, it's not wood. It's pretty much like some heavy duty, you know, cardboard, compressed cardboard, you know,
Oh,
heavy wrapped in cloth.
interesting. I've never seen that before. I've heard of
Yeah.
I know someone who was cremated in a wicker casket. Do you guys do those?
No, we don't get those too often. We have gotten some people that have passed away overseas.
Uh-huh.
Now that okay, cool. So like when that happens, pretty much you get embalmed wherever you pass away before you're able to be you know, flown back into the States. And yeah, when that normally happens out in Europe, um we get coffins, you know, the old style toe pinchers where the foot end is narrow.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. The
So
the old school classic thing that you see in a
yeah,
Halloween
yeah,
kind of movie.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we'll still
And
get those sometimes. So
so what about like the most expensive ones? Like us, and do they have like gold on them?
yeah, yeah,
Like
those are yeah. So that would be what like Michael Jackson went in and all that, and I'm not sure how much those go for.
I know, I believe in Ireland, some people who are super Catholic, they
Mhm.
have their viewing at their house. I don't know if in the have you heard of such a thing here in the US?
Yeah, so that actually became real big when COVID hit out here. Like before, I would sit
Oh
here and
yeah.
there where
Uh-huh.
families would be like, okay, cool, like hey, like we don't want to have something at church or whatever. We just want to have it at our house, and that was rare. But once COVID hit, you know, and they limited how big gatherings can be,
Yeah.
things like that. The people that didn't want to try and wait to have a service or you know wanted to wait out, you know, whenever the hell they were going to lift the restrictions, they would have it at their house. So yeah, so that became really big.
It is
Um,
it sounds dumb, but it is it legal?
yeah,
Like yeah.
yeah, that's totally legal.
So I've been hearing a number of things. Like there's this one mortician lady that I follow on YouTube. She posts videos and stuff like that, blah blah blah. And she is saying that basically a lot of they are trying to go towards a more like green approach towards when people pass away, and one of them is they not I think they actually not be buried in a casket, and they don't embalm them.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. I've heard of that, and I think they're called body farms. They have
yeah,
them
yeah,
in yeah the Midwest or
and
you know going towards back east. They have a couple of them.
is it not
You
that
know, so
popular
yeah,
here?
no, huh?
Is it not that popular here to be like
I don't know too many places that do that out by me.
uh-huh.
But I know as far as like cremations, I know they were going for a more water chemical approach.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that.
Oh,
What's it called again? I can't remember.
I'm not sure what that one is, but I know it, you know, it's pretty much you go into a machine. I'm not sure what they call the machine or what they would call the unit itself, and they fill it with some chemicals, and you know, it's water based, you know, and they're able to break down the body that way and act. And from what I understand, I think that one's good to just drain into regular, you know, the pipes and stuff like that. I'm not too sure.
Hmm.
But yeah, I know that was like the more greener approach because you figure that way you're not, you know, have to worry about like, you know, the pollutants in the air and things like that, you know.
Right. And do you know if they're embalmed when they're put into this uh water casket thingy?
I believe you could go either way on it. I believe you could still be
Interesting.
embalmed and be
Hmm.
placed into this, or you know, it could be just a direct, you know, no embalming, just go ahead and put them in, and you know,
Yeah, I've seen videos of people showing the thing. It's like this massive tube thingy, and then like I think the bones are left over or something like that. I
yeah.
can't
So pretty much once the process is done and they open it up, there's just the bone fragments that are left in there.
remember.
Um, and I actually knew a buddy that was looking into doing this. and he went and looked at a place, and pretty much one dude had kind of rigged up a dryer almost, because the bones were still wet from all the
Yeah.
solution. And I know they said normally, I think it was like a 72-hour process to dry them, but this one guy rigged up a heater that he was able to put the bones on trays and put it in there, and it sped
Mhm.
up the process. By how much, I'm not too sure, but yeah.
Have you heard of any others despite this water cremation
Yeah,
thingy?
yeah. I mean, sometimes it's they'll buy urns that they could just drop in the ocean, they disintegrate. The bag that the cremated remains in disintegrates, kind of goes back into the ocean floor, sea life, and all that.
Right.
I know there's also like the underwater burials where they'll kind of put you into a reef,
Really?
do that. Yeah, no, that's about as far as I know.
Do
Heard
uh
heard that they were doing one thing where they would put you in a weather balloon type device, and pretty much they'd float you out to the edge of the atmosphere, and then they
Your
would
body would
release. Yeah,
disintegrate?
and they would no, well, it was the cremated remains.
Oh,
And then they
okay.
would release you like once you got to the edge of the atmosphere, and you would be scattered that way. So I thought that
Interesting.
was pretty cool.
You just during the nighttime you look up and like, oh, there
Yeah,
he is.
yeah, it's kind of, yep, there it goes.
Yeah, seriously. The place where you work at, do you guys do any of these uh
Greener options.
yeah, like, so are
I've
these
seen the
kind
urns that are biodegradable that you could dump in the ocean,
of
but that's pretty much all I've seen.
well, that's interesting. Well, I assume that it's like kind of a thing that's not really that mainstream or anything, because like or maybe nobody's just figured out a way to do any of these kind of green ways of doing it and make it be affordable. I don't know. So from the beginning of when you started till now, do you see people being buried or cremated more?
Oh no, it's gone. It has totally switched over to cremation.
Like,
Cremation has kind of taken over just because it's like it's cheaper.
it is cheaper?
You're sitting there paying 10, 15, 20 grand for a funeral service when you could do like still have a decent service with a cremation for about 3,500.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And especially the way stuff keeps rising price wise, everything like that.
It is
Yeah,
more
because I do know mortuary prices go up every year.
uh because the price of everything goes up every
Yep,
year,
no,
or
just they will always put out a new price list every year, and what the current prices are, everything like that. And normally they are always higher than the previous one.
who determines the prices for all this stuff? The mortuary or like the state?
Yep. Yeah, no, the funeral home.
Oh, so you could say that they definitely do keep up with inflation. No.
Yep.
That's crazy. So from 2 years ago till now, uh, I assume you've seen a spike in cremations and all that. You guys just basically being busy.
Oh
Is
yeah, no, we ran out of room. Yeah, we had to rent a off-site storage facility to,
really,
to handle our caseload.
do you know if like every other mortuary is like that, or just you guys?
No, I know when COVID first hit, it was pretty much like every mortuary that was like out of room, everything like that. Yeah, now I think it's just a matter of like, where you're located, how bad it is. But
Of all the things that we've talked about and of all the time that you've spent working in a funeral home, being a crematory operator and all that stuff, is there anything that you actually want people to know regarding anything
I,
that goes on in
I
a
would say
funeral home?
just kind of like, if anything, like, pre-needs are not a bad idea. Where you prepay for your funeral. That way, if anything happens, it's already kind of like noted what you want, or, kind of like there's already been kind of like payments made towards what you want. I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah,
Because then, like, if someone were to die suddenly and never, talked about what they wanted or anything like that, it just goes to the standard, okay, we're gonna do this and this. And what if that, it was one of those where it's like that person was never into that, never wanted anything like that,
yeah. I think is the issue is I think if everybody, I don't know if it's something that people don't think about or they just don't have the money. I'm not sure
I
because
think it's just one of those things that people don't think about because people don't like to think about death.
yeah, exactly. And yeah, exactly. It's such a taboo thing, but
But then
um
you also get into the cases where families butt heads, or it's one of those things where if it's like, you know, if there's 5 children, and okay, cool, the children are bickering, so pretty much you would need the majority of the children to to sign off on the decision
decision to what?
as far as which way you want the funeral to proceed with. So if it's one of those things where it's like, there's 5 kids and it's like, okay, some want cremation and some want cremate and some want the traditional, church service and then a burial,
Uh-huh.
they will go with the majority.
Interesting. So families definitely do butt heads over just the general process
All
of
the time.
that's
All the time.
crazy. That's then yeah, no, this is actually it's a great thing you point this out because like I said, for anyone who wants to listen to this and like I said, how I asked you if there's anything you want to know, I imagine that is a pretty I don't want to say important thing, but it's like yeah, because most people don't think about it. And I mean I know a few people who've already made their funeral arrangements, but I think for the vast majority of people, they just
Yeah,
don't
people
even
just
think
don't think
about it.
about it. It's one of those things where it's like, oh no, like, like when it happens, it happens. It's like, okay, but
So that's a problem you come across constantly then.
yep.
That's crazy. Of all the things that could happen, that's I don't know, you would imagine people would uh I don't know, people are weird. And I guess they're in such an emotional state at that time.
Yep.
Oh, and last question I have for you right now is this something that you plan to do for the rest of your life? I mean, I don't want to ask you if you enjoy doing this because I know you're not a psychopath or anything like that, but I think the point of it is it something that you definitely could see yourself doing for I guess 20 years from now?
Probably not. I'll probably try and branch into something else, try and, maybe get like a manager's license or something like less physical, I
Yeah, I
guess, and
feel
kind
you.
of like doing something like that. But that's,
I was gonna say actually, the route to go are probably actually opening your own mortuary. I don't know.
the permits and everything else to try and get that, you got
Uh-huh.
to go through the city, city's got to want it. City could fight it. The residents can fight it. Like I've heard that's very expensive.
To open a mortuary?
Yeah,
Interesting.
just
Yeah.
for all the licensing and things like that. Yeah, and then I've heard trying to get a crematory started up is harder to do
Oh, why exactly?
because people don't want that. People don't want the crematories.
In
Like,
their town?
yeah, because like if you sit there and like you have a case that like kind of like starts smoking real bad or something like that, like it goes up into the air. People see it.
That's
And people's gonna
crazy.
go. Those gonna go like, okay, cool. Like, hey, like this is smoking all the time. This is this. This is that. So
Hmm.
yeah, most people don't want that.
That's this is exactly what I'm talking about. Like the whole thing, it's fascinating because it's like all these things are like basically are absolutely necessary because everybody dies,
Mhm.
but it's like nobody wants to deal with it,
Yep.
and I don't know, the whole thing is just fascinating to me.
Yeah.
But
Nobody deals with it till they have to.
yeah, exactly. And even then, they probably don't want to deal with it,
Yeah,
right?
and even then, like, okay, are you really dealing with it, or have you kind of checked out? Because it's too much for you.
Oh, that's horrible to laugh, but that is insane. Yeah, no, that's crazy. But for now, I think that's all I got for you.